turned 60 this summer, and I have never felt so excited about my life. It's almost like I'm looking at the next chapter and I'm saying, wow, the kids have grown up. You know, I'm done with all the stuff of the 50s and all the stuff, just all the stuff of life. And now I'm facing this beautiful new chapter. And what is beautiful about it is the fact that it is a time for possibility. It is a time for imagination. It is a time never, ever to give up on our dreams. It is a time to understand that we all matter and that we make a difference. We're living in a very challenging time on the planet right now. It's turbulent, it's difficult, whether you're 50 or whether you're 15. These are not easy times. And yet, in the midst of chaos, in the midst of turbulence, in the midst of crisis and collapse, we know also that it is a time for opportunity. It is a time for birthing, a new story. And I believe there is a new conversation happening on the planet right now. And this conversation is affecting women. I believe that women are now stepping up and in force around the globe and saying it is time for the feminine to emerge. And when I talk about feminine, I'm really not talking about masculine versus feminine. We're beyond that. We're not talking gender. We're talking about finding out how do we create a balanced existence on the planet, and therefore how do we bring together the masculine and the feminine principle. I've thought about this very deeply because in part I'm a businesswoman. For the past 20 years I have run businesses. I have been in the arena of the masculine, the testosterone-driven forces for growth, the aggressive forces that I've experienced. But at the same time, and please understand, you beautiful men in the audience, this is not about men, but it is a sense that I have understood that it is time for the principles of the heart, the principles of compassion, of nurturance, of sustainability, of empathy, to step into our lives as business people, as organizational leaders, no matter where we are. So what I am finding is that we are all hungry for balance. One of the most dangerous myths that has been perpetuated on our planet in the past 2,000 years is this, that we are separate. We are in fact not separate. We are as connected to one another as a family, as a shared part of our humanity. And when we understand that deeply, then I think our work begins. The reason I feel such hope for people over 50 is we are in the wisdom years. We've gone through the dramas of our lives, whether it's marriages and divorces and all of the drama. And now I feel it's the time to say, these are our wise years. I agree with you, Jean. I don't want to be called a senior ever, but I love the idea of being in my wisdom years, and that means I have a responsibility. My work in the world is inspired by 5 aspects of my being. One, as a mother. There is a fierceness about mothers when they feel they cannot protect their children. Whether you're sitting in Darfur in a refugee camp, or you're sitting in an affluent home in Tuxedo Park, New York. It doesn't matter. But it's as a mother that I have found myself doing the work I do in the world. My need to protect my children first, but also the children of the world, is just part of how I move, how I envision what my purpose is. I speak here as a peace builder. My work is about building bridges, especially in areas of the world that are in conflict. And it is the bridges of life that I seek to build rather than the walls, which goes back to the feeling that I feel so profoundly connected. I'm a global citizen, in part, as we all are. And again, I think when we understand that we're citizens of the world, we have a different perspective on life. And in my personal story, because I'm a refugee, I have in me a woman who lost everything at the age of 21. That has inspired and influenced profoundly the way I have lived my life and the way I will continue to live it. In 1972, a radio broadcast one June afternoon in Uganda, Kampala, Uganda. Our president at that time was Idi Amin Dada, a tyrannical dictator who had come into power through a military coup. That radio broadcast that afternoon was simply this: Idi Amin stating to his nation that I want everybody of Indian origin to leave my country in 3 months or you will be shot on sight. And in that numbing moment, 80,000 people were left bereft. My family was part of that expulsion. We lost everything. We lost our home, our assets were frozen. Father left the country with a raincoat slung on his shoulders, a couple of law books, and a packet of cigarettes, and $5 in his pocket. Within 18 months, my father had died at a bus stop on a November night in England. I was merely 21 years old. But in that moment, I had to ask myself, how do I go into life now when I feel that life has in a sense betrayed me and my people? And it became very clear that there were only two choices. And I would like to suggest that there are always only two choices in any given moment in our lives. And the one choice was either to go into life afraid, angry, embittered, depressed, numbed out, unforgiving, or to go into life forgiving, healing, loving, and finding even in that chaotic moment a gift, a meaningful gift that I could take into the world. Today, my mission is to work primarily with women who are rebuilding their lives in the shadows of war, genocide, civil strife. Wherever there is violence perpetrated on the planet, that is where I see my work being done, in part because the refugee woman in me seeks to be healed. And so I have, in the past 15 years, created businesses that have actually focused on women and women's economic empowerment, especially in these places. We all have a pivotal story in our lives, those moments when suddenly everything shifts. It's a transformational moment. And in my life, the transformational moment happened in 2004 when I went to Rwanda. At that time, I was a co-founder of a company that was a catalog company that sold artisan-made products from around the world. It was called Iziba, and we had launched as an online company in 1998. It was a visionary company. It was a pioneering company. It was using the internet for the very first time as a force for distribution. And I happened to have the privilege and the opportunity to be its co-founder. My arrival in Rwanda was to discover whether I could work with Rwandan widows who are basket weavers, and to see if in fact there was an opportunity here to support these women both economically, but also to see if we could find a way to heal. How strange that a business that is a for-profit company would even ask itself the question, how do we heal? Businesses aren't known for that. In Rwanda, while I was there, I heard a story, and I want to share the story with you because I think it's an important story. 3 months after the genocide, in 1994, 30 women got together under a eucalyptus tree. These women were bereft. They were numbed. Their children had been slaughtered, their families annihilated. They were from the members of the Hutu and the Tutsi tribes. So here is a gathering of women who are coming from the enemy factions. They stand there under the tree in silence until one of the women stands up and says, "Sisters, unless we find a way, we are all going to go mad with our grief. We must find a way to reconcile and heal and forgive." And so a woman stepped into the circle, a basket weaver, a simple woman who only knew how to weave the traditional Rwandan basket. And she invited her sisters to come in circle and weave the basket together. Read, sitting in circle, a Hutu woman would pass the basket to her Tutsi sister, and the Tutsi woman would pass it to the Hutu, and the basket went around and around and around until at the very last moment, there it was. This symbol of healing and reconciliation. These women were not sitting at peace negotiating tables. They would never be invited to the United Nations, and yet they had come up with a way to understand what it meant to heal and reconcile. When I heard this story and looked at the basket, I called it the Peace Basket. And I knew we had to launch it. So we launched it on the catalog. And American customers like you loved it and responded deeply. Within 18 months, we had sold over 10,000 peace baskets from Rwanda. I went back to Rwanda and met with the president, Kagame, and he said to me, do you understand that this one thing that you have done has put Rwanda on the map, not as the land of genocide, but as the land of peace? By calling it the Peace Basket, you have rebranded us. And secondly, do you not want to understand that the Peace Basket is today Rwanda's #1 non-agricultural export? Here, I was beginning to see how entrepreneurship and enterprise could enter into the arena of peace building, compassion, healing, reconciliation. I believe that businesses are a transformational agent for peace on this planet. Businesses create wealth, businesses are powerful. But the problem has been when businesses have seen themselves simply as profit-making instruments. It's when we expand the horizons of business and understand deeply that a business can be for profit and can be for good. The two go together. I see no difference, I see no separation, and I am committed in my work to find that marriage between the two. So with my story from Rwanda, I then entered into a very frightening time of my life. My marriage ended suddenly. And within a year, my company also collapsed. A multi-million-dollar company with $40 million in venture capital, with Amazon as one of its lead investors, suddenly, after 7 years, collapsed. Nothing. So from one day being a co-founder of this extraordinary enterprise, the next day I was on unemployment benefits. I wept and wept and wept. I hid and I hid away from the world. I honestly didn't know what to do. And it was during this time that I began to put together for myself an understanding of the lessons learned from this fabulous, extraordinary vision of a company, and tried to understand why it collapsed. And that's another talk, so it's not this talk, but when you are overcapitalized, it is equally a problem as when you're undercapitalized. Again, we go back to that word, balance. When you're intoxicated with your own growth and you're committed to fast growth at all costs, the only other model on the planet of fast growth, exponential growth, is cancer. And cancer ultimately devours itself. So I began to understand that our ambitions to grow rapidly with extraordinary pressure from our board was actually part of the problem. With $40 million in your pocket, you become intoxicated with your ego. You can do anything.